If you have been doing PHP, you know that it is quite simple to do a get and a post, but it is not straightforward to do a delete, put and patch. I will show you a workaround that I use to create PHP APIs, and I will explain these different HTTP methods as we go along in this tutorial. To create a GET request, obviously you need to have your Apache server running. I already have that done. Go to the main document, the main folder. In my computer is the htdocs folder, and we're going to build the htaccess file, .htaccess, that's the name of it. We're going to create the first line that is going to be the rewrite engine on. This tells our Apache server that we're going to be overwriting some of the rules or creating new rules to access the different files in the server. We're going to pretend that everything is for users, so we're going to be able to create a user, update a user, delete users, and read users. Since we're going to do a get now, we're going to create a rewrite rule, and this rule is going to be the caret sign with the $sign, and it's going to be for the users. So these users at the moment just means that if we go to Postman and then we point to users, localhost users, that is the request we're going to try to fetch. And this is going to take us internally to a file that we can call anything we want. I will call it api-get-users.php. If we want this to be case insensitive, meaning that the user can write, for example, something like that, capital and lowercase letters, then this will be using the flag called NC for no case. And this is going to be the last route. So we do an L, meaning that nothing else in this file will be interpreted once this route is completed. So this is how we are going to do a get. But if we want to be more explicit about it, we can say that the rewrite condition, that will be the count, it's going to be, and then you have to type percentage and open and close curly braces. And the request method, request underscore method, is going to be a get. Let's save this, and we are going to create now the file that we call API getUsers.php. Copy, create a new file, API getUsers.php. So this file is going to be a PHP file, so we just open the tag and we are going to echo users. Obviously this is a tutorial about APIs, not about databases, not about connection to other APIs or systems. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a comment here, and I'm just going to pretend that this is interact with the database. So you get all data about it. And this response is going to be an array with JSON users, most likely. Save it, send the request, and now we have the first get request done. So this is how you create this type of method via the get that you see right here. To create a post request, meaning that we are going to be able to save a user in the system, what we need to do is we need to write the condition again. So I'm going to copy line number 5, paste it. And this condition is not going to be a get anymore, it's going to be a post. We're going to generate the rule as well, so we'll copy line number 6 and paste it in line number 9. And this is going to point to users again, but internally the file is not going to be called API get users. This file is going to be called obviously anything you want, but I will call it API create user in singular, because I'm going to be building only one user. Save the htaccess file, let's create the API create user file. Copy the name of it, create a new file, paste it. And obviously, as we did with the other file, we need to open the PHP tags. I'm going to put a comment in which we're going to interact with the database. Pretend that we have done something with the database and then we created a new user. So we're just going to echo user created with ID, and we're going to fake that the ID we receive from the database is ID 1. Save the file. Now we move to Postman, and in Postman we're going to create a new entry, a new route here. So we say localhost /users. If we do this and we send the request, we get all the users. But remember that in the htaccess file we did a post request, therefore we select post. When we send this request, we get that the user was created with ID 1. Let's pass some data inside the post request, because obviously you need to pass some data. You need to pass a name, a last name, email, and so on. So I'm going to say that in the body, in the form data, we will just pass a name, and the name will be the letter A. If we send the request, we don't see the A here, but we're going to do that now in the API create user file. So user created with ID 1, remember the 1 came from the database, and if we want to pass also the name of it, user, let's put the name right in here. So I'm going to concatenate single quote dot single quote, and then I'm going to put the name that we get from the request. So this happens via the post method, and the variable is called name. So I will write here name. The output should look like user A created with ID 1. Save it. Let's move to Postman, send the request, and then we have user A. I'm missing a space there. Let's add it right there. Send the request. User A created with ID 1. So if the name was, let's say, Santi, that's my name, that's my nickname, then you can see that user Santi created with ID 1. So this is how we do a post request. Creating a delete method is not as straightforward as you may think. Some of you will just try to copy and paste one of the conditions and change the post to a delete. This will work. It will be able to actually do the redirection from a path to a different path, but the data that you will have inside the form in the delete method is not going to be able to be retrieved by PHP. Obviously, you can tweak the server to do this, but it's going to be too complicated, and some servers don't allow you to do that. So what I mean with the delete method is that if we point to localhost, and then we say that we want to go to the user's path and we want to delete, if this data, the user's ID we want to delete, was not coming in the URL but inside the params, inside the body, sorry, and then we have the form data, and then we pass ID 1, for example, even though we could end up pointing correctly to the route, this ID 1 will never be able to be gotten or be retrieved by PHP. So to do that, to solve it, this is the, let's say, the shortcut that we can do in PHP. We create a post method, and then what we do, we say users delete. And this delete is just something I am inventing on the fly. You can call it anything you want, but if you have this, then you can use the body, form data, and pass the ID. Let's create the route now in VS Code. This is going to be a post again. If from Postman we point to users / delete, then we're just going to point to the file called API delete user. Let's create this file. So I'm just going to copy this name, and I'm going to create the API delete user. Let's take the code from the API create user, go to the API create user, copy the code, we don't need this file anymore, and paste it in the API delete user. So now we're just going to echo user deleted with ID, and now we're going to pass here the concatenated post, and the variable that we're going to pass is the ID. This ID is this ID in Postman. So let's send this request. We have no data here. Let me just check if it is saved. It's not. Save it. Send it. Now you can see how we passed the ID via a delete. It is not a real true delete method like you will see in Node.js or, as I mentioned, Flask or Bottom, but this is the way you can do it. If you have been using Symfony or maybe Laravel, as far as I recall, they will do something like this. Method equals, and then they can do here a delete or a put or a patch. I really dislike this way of doing it. There's no way I can like this syntax. I prefer to just say users/delete. So this makes a much more professional API. You can see a get localhost users, you can see a localhost users delete. So the name of the URL is actually very descriptive. Let me show you now how we do the put and the patch. To do put and patch, it is the exact same thing as we did with the delete. So let's copy line number 11 and 12. Let's paste it. And now we can do a put method. And we're going to say that this is going to update a user. And this will point to the API update user file. Let's copy this name and let's create the file. What we're going to do, we're just going to take the delete user as a blueprint, copy what's inside that file and paste it inside the update user newly created file. Save it, and we're just going to say that the user has been updated. User updated. Let's move to Postman and create this route. We're going to point to localhost/update. And what we need to do is check that this is going to be not a put, because as I told you before, you cannot pass the data via the form, meaning that you cannot pass inside the body form data these elements right there. So what we do is, instead of selecting a put, professionally speaking, you should use a put if you want to do a RESTful API, but you don't have to. It is possible to build API without the put. So what we do is we set it as a post, and we're going to say that we point to users/update. Send it. Now we have this 404 not found, and that's because right here this should be a post. Let's send the request again. The user has been updated. And if we want to pass here, for example, ID of 1, now we're going to just say that user with ID 1, let's concatenate, and this will come from post. We're going to grab the ID variable, update it, save and send, user with ID 1 updated. And we're going to do the exact same thing for the patch. Now I'm not going to code the patch because it is the same thing we did with the previous routes. This will be a post and this will also be an update. So if you have this put and patch, you just need this update route. There's a difference between those two. So if you look at Postman and then you wanted to do a fully RESTful API, you could select put, you could also select patch. The difference is the following. If you do a put, pretend that you have a document, a user that has an ID, and the user has a name and an email. If you do a put and then you want to update the name A, let's say the name is A and the email is a@a.com, ID1, pretend that you want to change the name to B, to the letter B. If you do a put, what will happen, or what you should code, is that the name will turn into B, the ID will never be touched, that's always respected, but the email will disappear, because what you did is you replaced the whole element except the ID, you replaced it with a new name that is B. So I'll give you another example. Let's say that you want to put the email b@b.com. You have to code the logic in PHP or any backend language and also in the database, so the ID will not be touched. The email is going to be b@b.com, so the name is not going to be updated, therefore it disappears, and then the email will turn into the new email. So you literally replace every other element except the ID with the new data. In the case of patch, let me open a new document here. If this was a patch, pretend that you have the ID 1, the name is A, and the email is a@a.com. If you say that you want to patch the name to the letter B, everything stays exactly as it was. You only update what's needed, so the name will become the letter B. This is what we all know in a database. We just update the name to the new value in a patch, but put replaces the whole element except the ID and the data that you want to put in that element. Well, I hope you like this video, and I hope you also have a lot of ideas and comments about it, and thanks for watching.